Okay, this is a quick demo of lazy loaded JavaScript and CSS against Helix blocks. So we're going to pull up a page, and we'll actually pull up the network tab in the console. And we're just going to go to this Helix page, of course, and we can see that here we have our content, and it loads super fast. But if we want to filter it, we can see styles, and if we hover over this style, we can see that these are just our regular styles. So this is like body and things like that, basically our page styles. And then we have, of course, our block. This is the home hero, which is being loaded. Now what's interesting is if we scroll down, you will actually see another style come in. And what that style is actually the footer. And so it's lazy loaded, so it obviously didn't load until we scrolled and it came within our threshold of when it should load. And we could open that, and we can just see, you know, we have a simple background and some padding. We actually don't even have any content. What's even more interesting is that if we reload this page, and we'll actually filter for scripts. So we can see our scripts are here. This is, again, just page scripts. But if we scroll, we can see that, hey, our footer has a script. So we can see blocks, footer, scripts over there. And if we look at the console, we can actually see you have reached our actual footer. How does this all work? So I'm glad you asked. So we have defined a couple of blocks. So home hero, and really our key is our selector that we want to use. So we have home hero, and if you find home, we're basically saying if you find home hero, the location for the styles and scripts are going to be here, and the style is going to be called this. And for footer, we have the location of course, footer. Style is styles.css, scripts.js, and then our init script is just init, you know, and we just call that. So of course we have add CSS. That's kind of pretty straightforward. We add an actual CSS tag with the location that is defined in our block. JS, same exact thing. Initialize JS is a little bit more interesting in that we get the object property. So we actually slice up that string. So we're not just executing that blindly. We actually find out if this actually exists as a JavaScript object. So we get that. And then when we get that back, and we actually iterate, so we wait for that to sort of land. So we wait for our JavaScript to land, and then we're able to execute it. And then we initialize that function. And we pass in the element, because you as a developer might want to actually use that. Load element, of course, is just we take the element, and this is also fairly interesting. So we get the block, so the selector of the block, which we then use to actually get the block properties. So, you know, what's the selector we're using, or where's our JavaScript and all of that. And that's because of the way the intersection observer, which I'll get to later, the way intersection observer works, there's not a great way to pass additional props. So we added it as a data set or a data attribute. So we also say if the block has not been loaded, because we don't want to reload, you know, if we've already loaded CSS for, let's say, a section, we don't want to reload that over and over and over again. So we actually test for that. And so if it's never been loaded, we'll add the style. So we add that CSS script or that CSS, and then we'll add the JS. And then no matter what, we will always, if there are scripts, we definitely want to initialize that JS because we want to light that up. Maybe it's an accordion, maybe it's a carousel. Even though the JS might have already been loaded, we still want to execute against that element. And then we, of course, say, hey, the block has been loaded for sure. And then the rest of this is really just intersection observer stuff. And so if we look here, we take our blocks that we've defined, and for each block, we go find the elements that match those blocks. And then for each one of those, we just go ahead and observe them and find out if they're in the viewport or close to the viewport based off of our sort of offset. So we have a root margin, and that's really our sort of the bounds outside of our viewport. And so now we have lazy loading JavaScript and CSS on our page, which you of course saw here. That's all I got.